Welcome back to the Ohio Painting Company podcast. I'm Brett, the host of the show, and today I'll be joined by Kevin Sillaman, one of the founders of the Ohio Painting Company. Nick Goebel was out sick today, and we'll be discussing several things, ins and outs of the Ohio Painting Company, what sets the Ohio Painting Company apart from the rest, and we'll talk a little business here and there about what a painting company is, what they do. It might all be in the name, but there's several other things that go into it, and we'll dive straight in with Kevin Sillaman, the guest on the Ohio Painting Company podcast. Back in for another episode of the Ohio Painting Company podcast. I'm Brett Wharf alongside Kevin Sillaman. He's in Dayton, Ohio, home of the Ohio Painting Company itself. I myself on the other side of the state in Southeast Ohio, Marietta. That's our town. And Kevin, you were raised here, not born here. You were raised in Marietta, right?
I was raised in Marietta, yes. I was born up in Ravenna.
Okay, and that is sort of maybe east central?
Northeastern.
Okay.
Northeastern for sure, yeah.
Gotcha. State of Ohio. So you've really been in the state for the majority of your life with a couple of years outside. I know a Florida residency was packed in there somewhere. Tell me more about that. Before you really settled in where you are now?
So a couple of side notes I'm going to throw out there. A lot of the family are Pittsburgh fans, Pittsburgh Steelers, Pirates, whatever. All of my siblings were born in Pennsylvania, and I was born in Ravenna. Once we crossed the river, Dad got a different job. And I remember in the 70s when the steel curtain, before it rusted out, the Steelers were just slamming Pirates. I mean, they were just going nutso in the 70s. And I started to cheer them on. And my brother Donnie, Uncle Donnie, he's like, you can't vote for the Steelers. I'm like, why not? He says, you weren't born there. I'm like, whatever. So I ended up picking the Vikings, and I, to this day, hate the Steelers. So anyway, just a little side note.
It was big in the area. It was big in the area. It still kind of is. It's the Steelers, it's the Browns, it's the Bengals, that whole thing. And you're pretty close to the Bengals down there, along with the Reds. But the whole thing in high school was, are you a Bengals fan or are you a Steelers fan? So that kind of still rattles around in my brain a little bit. Not so much Baltimore. I never really. Do you say Vikings or Ravens? You said Vikings, right?
I said Vikings.
Yeah, Vikings. Yeah. Okay, so I mean that's kind of out in a different part. I feel like. How'd you land on them?
Okay, oddly enough, I wasn't going to finish that, but I said, well, then who should I vote for? Because I had no clue. And he says, well, not the Browns. And so, back in the 70s, I mean, they've always. Oh well, we'll leave that alone because we have a lot of Ohio natives there. And they are a great team, without a doubt. Also the Bengals, But I said, what am I looking for? He says, you need to qualify him. And I'm like, yeah, whatever. So he said, okay. He says, pick out a helmet you like. And so I thought, well, the Viking, big horn, man, that looks pretty nasty. So I've just been a Vikings fan ever since. And good thing about that is, you're up at the beginning of the season and down at the end of the season every year, so it's consistent. I'm good with that.
I say we, it's always good to start with a little bit of a riff, kind of catch up a little bit from week to week to see where we are, what we've been doing. But last week we really talked about the start of the Ohio Painting Company, where you were when you figured out that you wanted to get into this business and stay in it and make it successful. And we had your cohort, your main man, Nick Goebel, on, who has fallen sick, so he's not going to join us this week. We'll catch up with him next time. But the whole start of a painting company is, figuring out where you want to be and how you want to do it with the people you want to do it with. But I would say a lot of people that are outside of this particular trade, and I'm not talking about just one trade, I'm talking about building the house, painting it, doing all different sorts of things to make a house a home. I would say a lot of people kind of all put that in one basket, but that's not necessarily the case. You're not home builders. You're not window people. You're not roofers. You're painters. So what is it that you could let the listeners know about that sets painting apart from the construction side of things or the roofing side of things?
Well, I think to put it in perspective, in new construction, the the line item is for the builder, to make the money, obviously. And when if you could hire a builder to just do building, to put the sticks together, that'd be great. And then you could hire your own drywall guy, and you could hire your own plumber, painter, electrician, the whole deal. You'd be basically the main contractor of your home. That's probably the best way to go. That way you've weeded out the bad guys that you don't want. The difference between even in construction and what we do professionally, there is a professional realm of construction painting, but we're already bottom feeders. But new construction, they just do not give you any money to paint a house. So it's kind of where you could learn to paint a little bit. I'm not going to say wholeheartedly, but when you get into the professional realm of painting, you can go into any home at all, and besides the fact just making a difference, in their selection of paint, but you can make that wall baby butt smooth. You can take the brush strokes out of the door jams. You can take the roller marks out of the rolls, out of the doors, and you can cut a line that is, as straight as can be without tape. So a lot of our guys, as we train them, they don't go to that point, to that extent, to where they're cutting, to where everybody's cutting in straight lines. So a lot of them use tape, and there is a good balance for sure with that, because you're either gonna, well, that's a little bit too deep too, but I think what cuts us apart from being just regular handymen, because that's where we're located in Google. We don't have a plumbing section or an electrician section. We've no painting section. We're handymen. You will get a plumber section, and you will get an electrician's section, but again, we're handymen. So again, what sets us apart though is well, here at the Ohio Painting Company anyway, we like to make sure that you love us. I mean, that's the main thing. That's not just saying it. We tell a lot of our customers that that's the goal, is for you to love us. And that means, properly respecting their time and money. That's easy to say, sounds real nice, but what that includes is the proper foundation, of coming into a house and making sure that, all the drop cloths are down, or the floor paper is down, all of the, if there were sanding, that everything's covered up so that there's no dust, and if there is dust at the end, taking and dusting the furniture, or dusting
The mantle, the back of the couch, however it may be, yeah.
Exactly. So that's kind of what makes us a different animal. Some of our guys, we get in a lot of trouble at the beginning with new guys, where they don't get those techniques right off the bat, but they learn pretty fast that if they want to hang, they're going to have to start. So most of them like the money. We pay them well, so we're very thankful to have them, and that's why we pay them well. But we want them to perform also. So there's just a sense of that. Sorry.
Right. No, you're fine. I wanted to go back to what you said a second ago, and I don't remember exactly how you put it, but it was something along the lines of, we're not in the painting section of Google. We're in the handyman section of Google. And you mentioned last week that where you went to school, there wasn't a painter's course because you studied carpentry, correct?
It is true, yes.
So, I mean, do you think that is still kind of fizzling off a little bit, even still today? However many decades later since you've been outside of school, do you still notice that there might be a little bit of, what's the word I'm looking for here? I can't say discrepancy, but
well, I'm not sure what the proper word is, but most people think that they can paint. So, I mean, and if they don't think they can paint, they think they should at least give it a try. And then once they do, they're happy with the results because it's all they know. So They just assume that they can paint, and they just paint for the rest of their lives. But if you've got a pretty good education, and you know that you don't want to take the time to paint because you want it done right, then you start noticing those little things whenever you start hiring painters. But I like to call them bottom feeders. I mean, that's kind of what we are, our bottom feeders.
Now, why is that? Explain why. I mean, how does that fit in? And I think the word I was looking for a second ago was prejudice. Do you think that the world of the internet is prejudiced against painting folks? That they just throw them into a category and say, nah, they're just, they're just handymen. They slather colors on the wall. That's about it.
Yeah. I just think that they really, I mean, again, they just think that we're bottom feeders. I mean, that we don't really need to be professionally called out, because again, anybody can paint. And it is true. All you got to do is buy a $10 brush. You could probably buy a $2 brush, and a gallon of paint. I'm sure you could get a gallon of paint cheap enough. But knowing the right quality of paint that you can, and how to work that paint, there's a big difference. And you don't want a $2 brush. You don't want a $2. I mean, if you do, you do. That's fine. But
have fun picking the bristles out of the wall.
There's that. That's just one. Yeah, that's just one thing. So yeah.
The whole thing with what you do and how you do it, and we really harped on this last week, I know, so we won't spend too much time on it. But there is a science to it. It is an art. I mean, you use paint when you're a kid with your fingers, and then you graduate to the little brush on the coloring book or whatever. That's art. So you're doing big boy art, and you're doing structural art that really changes the view. I've seen pictures from way early on, and we might flash some of those up on the screen here if you're watching on YouTube. But the transformations that I see, that has to be inspirational for a ton of other people that say, I want to learn how to do this. I'm going to get on the phone with OPC and get the training, figure out how to do this, and, potentially have, a California painting company or something. I'm just kind of harping on this a little bit, but it's not impossible to do what you did despite the rocks that were in the road, right?
Right on. Yeah. I mean, and I believe that's really a core, in just business period. If you want to achieve anything at all, it doesn't matter if it's collecting rocks. Be the best rock collector there is, and that's all there is. And does that take more than rocks? Yeah, unless your rocks are gold rocks, then, but it's still going to take money to get those gold rocks. So anyway, yeah, you've got to put some education, your way, and really learn the ins and outs, not just of painting or whatever business you decide to do, but there are a lot of things that if you did not go to college to take a business degree, that you're going to come upon that you wish you would have. So I think we talked a little bit about that last week also.
Right, because I'm jumping into the business world without really too much knowledge. I'm picking up a lot as I continue on, and now that we're here in January, the goosebumps are coming in, and those aren't excited goosebumps. Those are nervous goosebumps because I had an employer at the beginning of the year. I was doing freelance work as myself, and then I started my business and got my LLC, so there's going to be a lot of different areas of taxes that I'm going to have to do this year, and I think it's going to suck really bad. So I might be on the phone with you. What do I do? What do I do here? What do I do here? Tick some boxes off and things like that. Because I'm nervous about it, and there's no question.
Yeah. Well, the one thing that I think, way back was whenever I love Ford, obviously, but Henry was in court, and they were suing him, and they were asking him all these questions. How do you think you're going to do that? How you going? And his answer was, he says, I don't need to know how to do things. I just need to surround myself with people that do know how to do those things, and we'll get it done. And my advice would be to you is, don't talk to a painter about taxes. But that's not a good answer. But there is there are a lot of tidbits though that we could quite possibly help with along the way for sure. But a good CPA is well worth the money. And if you find, I'll say this, if you find that whatever CPA you're with, anybody at all out there, They could be the biggest thing, in your area. And if you don't feel like you're getting the time, if you don't think that you're getting enough time spent with you, you should probably change CPAs, because we've been with a very large firm, and we're not a large company. A couple of $1,000,000 isn't really a big deal, but the tax people that we're working with, whenever they're, and they're working with people that are making, hundreds of millions of dollars a year, we felt like a small fish. We found a really, really good CPA that we're going to do some amending on 1 year in general. But man, the fact that here's my thought, and we'll end this because I know it's a little bit too lengthy. But if you're paying taxes, something's wrong, because sure, maybe if you pay, 1,000, or I don't know where your number's at, but you should have enough write-offs, because you are very supportive, first of all, to your community by hiring people, by giving them jobs, and by doing all the things that you have to do, mentally, physically. All of these things, they should equate out to what you're worth, and your worth, hopefully, is worth at least your taxes.
I hope
because
so.
That's really not that much, but anyway, so there you go.
Yeah, and I think that might be right. We are off topic of painting a little bit here, but that's kind of what this is all about. We're here to talk. However far we want to go in a different direction, we can do it, and we don't really care what you have to say about it either. So we're just gonna keep on going. But yeah, it's different in every single business. Obviously you have equipment that you have to buy, but so do I. Over the last year, I've bought 5 cameras and a car. So, I am hoping that quite a bit of that, they were all business purchases, so I'm hoping that really equals out to something,
Right.
later on.
It's going to be a matter of when do you write them off.
Right.
Do you write them all off this year? Do you need those deductions, or do you think you might want to hold off because you've got enough this year and you can kind of prorate those out? But yeah.
Yeah, we might stick on the topic of taxes in the next couple of weeks as we get closer to April, so the next couple of months here as we push through tax season. So we'll stop that from here. And I wanted to, I'm sure that we could have an entire episode on my next question, which will wrap up the episode. But the whole thing of getting to a property, noticing something that is maybe a little broken. Let's say something's broken. The homeowner's not around. They're not going to be around. And you left your cell phone in the car and you're up on the roof. Is it better to just go ahead, get that repaired for them without their permission, bringing up the old adage of sometimes it's better to ask for forgiveness instead of permission? And you can take this really anywhere you want. It doesn't have to be that example of something's broken, I'm going to fix it without letting you know. But are you a believer in that phrase? Because I've heard it a lot jumping into business.
So it's a good phrase to get shot. It's a good phrase to use at home with the wife, for sure, especially if you want to go fishing and you're already out. But if you're on the roof and you don't have any access to, most likely you're not going to have, if it's a big deal, you're not going to have access to the tools that you need to fix that. If you're already up there and you find some, and you're digging into the wood and you're already replacing a few pieces of trim, and you notice a piece of the and maybe some siding, but you would notice that a underneath the siding, one of the 2x4s, or one of the 2x4s or whatever they're using behind that, has been rotted out and it needs replaced. Most likely that's going to be a pretty big job, but if you can sister it in, if you can put a 2x4 beside that, have somebody throw one up to you, nail it in, and then that way you've got that support back. As long as that area is tight, you could just leave it. I don't think there's really a big deal in charging somebody for something like that. But I guess in saying that, I just don't believe in asking for forgiveness, so to speak. I'd rather the homeowner know. And in that scenario that I just gave out, Devon and I, a long time ago when we painted together, we'd find things and we'd just do them, and we wouldn't tell anybody. And I believe that's why God's blessed our business. And we just take care of it, and it wouldn't be a big deal. Now, time is money, and you really got to look at those things. But if we can get away with it, we will. We'll leave it alone. We'll take care of it and not charge them. But if it gets pretty lengthy, we better ask them to do it, because if anybody, they're going to be asking us for forgiveness because they're not paying us. So
yeah, the time is money thing. You could really open up a whole can of worms when you start digging. You find one problem and there's 2 more underneath of it and 5 more underneath of that. That could really start leading into some stuff where you definitely want to ask for permission or get somebody that's specialized in that particular type of thing. I think, if in future episodes, maybe next week or the week after, if we're not talking about taxes too much, then we could probably dive into some serious examples of, particular jobs, things that you've seen. And that's really what I want to talk about, the true field experience of a painter in Southwest Ohio, because, I've lived here my entire life. I've seen what winters can do to the exteriors of houses, and I'm sure you've literally seen it all, and if you haven't seen it all, you're going to be pretty damn close to seeing it all. So I think that would be a great episode in the near future. Dig into those examples and really talk about what you've seen out there.
Yeah, I think it's a great one. If you want to remind me of it, the winter snow that freezes in your gutters as it melts, that's we're going into a house, again, and repairing the ceilings in there because of what it does. But the reason it does is the key, and you can take care of that reason by not doing something that you would think that aesthetically it looks pleasing, but the damage that it does. Well, it's caulking behind a fascia board to the soffit. It looks like that gap needs to be taken care of, but the water needs to be able to escape out of there. And if it doesn't, then it's going inside. So that's just one of the things. That's a big money thing, especially on insurance jobs. So.
That's Kevin Sillaman. He is one of the founders of the Ohio Painting Company. My name's Brett. I'm your host for the Ohio Painting Company podcast. We want to thank you for coming back and joining us again here for another episode. And as we've mentioned and will mention always and throughout this entire series, we encourage everybody to head over to Facebook, Twitter, known as X now, as well as Instagram and YouTube. Give us a like and a follow, and go ahead and give us a review on this podcast. And everything helps as we push forward through a winter season in the state of Ohio. If you don't know, you probably don't want to know how it is here in the wintertime. But Kev, I want to thank you again for coming on, and we'll be talking soon.
Yeah, thanks, Brett. We appreciate it.